first.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn was the first one, and then Lynn eventually.
And that's the oldest sister, right?
Yeah, that's Brian Joy's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And she stayed here for the 3 years to get her citizenship. And of course, her husband was not getting along too well, and she kind of hoped that coming here.
And that's when you took care of Bri
Right.
and Joy.
And Joy,
Right.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So she came home after, and they realized that the marriage was not going to work out. And so she.
So I never realized that Olga really was like the linchpin that got at the family up here.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. She brought Lynn, and then of course Lynn eventually brought her children, and then she got me to come up here on a visitor's visa, and it terminated in my marrying Lloyd and all that and getting, and then Barry came up, and he came up,
And ignored you.
Yeah. So it is, and that's why sometimes we do say, because my brother is very handy, and when Olga bought that house, there are lots of little things to be done in the home, and he never really did anything to help, and things like that.
And he stayed there.
Oh, of course. We all stayed in her apartment where they live in the Bronx. All of us were there at one time. And then when Lynn's girls came up, she got her own apartment. And I went with her. And I think Mary came too with Lynn. And then, of course, when he was processing his papers, he came on a visitor's visa. He got through, was processing his papers. And he went home to come back. And then he stayed here. I think he started out staying with us, but I know I went with Lynn at the beginning.
Now, did Olga ever work? I mean, Ryland was in the ministry. Did Olga?
She beauty culture. That was her. She did.
Was she cut hair, or she was?
No, did hair. Pressing. Hair. She had a parlor in
Oh, that's
in
right.
Harlem.
I guess she talked about that during Rich's wedding.
Yeah. She had a parlor in Harlem. In Harlem. That was what she did.
Did she
And
employ
Ryland,
people, or was she just the only person in the parlor?
well, she rented out booth, or she. I don't know if she rented out. Coming to think of it, I think she may have rented a room. It was quite a few hairdressers in the building, in the building. She had her booth, and other people had their booth. But Ryland had a regular job. He used to work at this place called. It was a textile company in Brooklyn, and when I came up, I got a little part-time job there. I wasn't supposed to work. He got me.
Oh, because you're on a visitor's visa, right?
What was the name of the boss? Marty. He was Jewish, but they adore because he's really a good worker. He's an earnest man, and
Marty or Uncle Ryland?
Uncle Ryland. Whatever he goes after, he does it with his heart, and they really loved him. And then when I started working with him.
So wait, I don't understand. Did he come up and go into dentistry school, and he worked at the textile place?
No, when he gave up on the dentistry, with all that he went through with this running around trying to get visa. So when he came back, he just decided he wouldn't bother anymore, because now Olga was, he had a wife now and all that. So, but Olga kept pushing him that he should get back into the ministry, but not liking the Baptist ministry. They became members at this Presbyterian church in the Bronx. And he became active in it, because that's him. He must be active with something. He became very active in it. And then they started to see him, and they suggested, why don't you, and when, you do something about it. And then when they found out that he was already an ordained minister, because he went through theological college in Jamaica, he was already an ordained minister, they figured he didn't have to take courses. He just have to take certain rules of the Presbyterian church. So he did that, and he was inducted as a minister for the church in the Bronx, Williamsbridge.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking about you had the job at the textile mill, even though you weren't supposed to on your visitor's visa.
I used to go with them he had this, it was a pool that he had, and these men used to pick him up in the morning. They were all Spanish, I remember. And they used to leave early, so he asked them to give me a drive, because I wasn't accustomed to traveling around New York, especially away to Brooklyn, which was where they were.
And you would have taken the subway?
I would have had to take the subway and make changes. So he asked them if I could come along with them. So I did it for a while, but apparently, being the young Spanish men, they wanted to run their little rude jokes, so they weren't too happy about me being gone. but by then I had kind of learned, So I went for a while, and then what happened now? I started to get because I was working under a false name and everything.
Oh, wow. You're kidding.
Yes, I was working.
What was your false name?
I think I kept my mother's name. I think Agnes. Shaw. I think it was my mother's name I had. Yeah.
So what was your mom's name? Agnes.
Shaw.
Agnes Shaw. Mm-hmm.
So, I
Wow,
Yeah.
your mom was like
yes.
probably
A felon.
a felon.
That's why I say you have to be careful. Don't show that tape. They may come back at me now.
I think they've got bigger things to worry
But
about
then-
now than
But
a
then
60-year-old.
eventually, when I got permission to work, I did get permission because I applied to go to school to take up contometry, and that was a
What?
machine in those days, a machine called contometry.
Contometry?
It was the strangest machine I'd ever seen. It was like a glorified adding machine, but with more keys and that. And you had to, the funny thing about it is that in operating it, you couldn't just do like an ordinary machine.
Right.
You had to put your hand in certain ways, crisscrossing your hands over each other. And that was the first machine I learned here. And then I started to take up, it wasn't called computer then. I'm trying to remember what a keyboard, key punching or something like that.
Data
So,
processing or
these,
data
yeah.
entry.
And I was doing, and I kind of continued to do secretarial work and shorthand and things just to have a visa to stay.
Mm-hmm.
How much were you making then?
Oh God, I don't remember, Dave. It was so little because I gave up that job because I wanted, now what the immigration gave me permission to work.
Do you remember
So
what
I
one of
did.
your salaries were? It's just kind
Oh.
of interesting to.
Well, I don't think it was, if I was coming home with maybe the minimum thing there was maybe like $3 and change.
For
an
what,
hour.
a day or an hour?
I think
Oh.
it was.
That's more than I expected.
Yeah.
It may have been, I think it was about that though. And I was working with there was a toy place on a place called Girard Avenue in the Bronx there that I worked for a while. And then.
Was this while you were at the textile mill or afterwards
No,
when you
after
were?
I gave up
okay,
the
right,
textile
okay.
because I was working under the false name.
Right.
Now I have permission to work. So, I work on
So you
that.
could be legal.
So I went.
Well, my mother had a green card you had a green card until I was in college, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you
got
didn't
your
become a
citizenship.
I got
citizen.
my
Yeah.
citizenship before you went to college. I
Was it
think so.
before we went to
I
college?
think so. Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
But anyway, you worked at the toy store.
Yeah, I worked at the toy store, and then I gave that up, and I started working at on Varick Street in the telephone company.
Mm-hmm.
But that was part-time.
As an operator or what?
No, working on stocks and bonds. So many times a year, they had this big thing going with stocks and bonds there. I guess.
What, the shareholders meeting,
for
or?
shareholders and things like that. So that was where I got in, and I started working there, and they would call me back every time. But in the meantime, I was applying for a more permanent job. So, but before that, I forgot this little part. I had applied at another textile place up Broadway. I remember that clearly. God, I can't remember the name of the place, but it's a big company
Mm-hmm.
In
I was-
Manhattan, Broadway.
in Manhattan, Broadway. I was still using that thing.
What, the
fake
false
name.
name?
And I went to the job. I took the test. I got the job. Reported to work the first day. And the second day, they sent a message over to tell me, oh, I have to bring in my green card.
Yeah, and you didn't have one.
I didn't go back.
Right.
I didn't go back. I just never went back. And that would have been a lovely job
Yeah.
because it was really the machines that I had learned.
Mm-hmm.
I would, And then I got another little job before.
Now wait,
the
what
telephone.
years are we talking here? When did you come over?
I came over in '56.
Okay.
So all this happened between '56 and '60.
Okay.
Within a 4-year period. I had another little job somewhere.
And she married the man of her dreams.
It was another big company. They were all good big companies, do you know, that I'm talking about now. It went down there. But when I got the telephone job, that was when I really decided, oh, this is good because it allows me some time too. It was like part-time on and off. They
Right.
call you and you leave for a few weeks. And then,
All this time you were staying with Lynn or with Olga or?
up to all this point, it was with Olga.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they called me permanently
Mhm. Like full time.
At the
full
farm,
time. Yeah.
Mhm.
But at that, what happened then? Why I think I had. It was around the time that I was getting married to your father, and I couldn't take it because I knew I would have had to go home to Jamaica to finally process my
Mhm.
papers there to come back.
Mhm.
So I didn't go in for the interview for the
Mhm.
permanent job at the
Mhm.
telephone company, and which I regretted later on because you could get bad stocks and all that with the
Yeah.
company. But then when I came back now, I started completely afresh because, of course, I had a new name now and everything. I was mayor now. And that was when I applied and got the job at Bow Jewels, Bowman Foster.
What is that?
It was a company that handled jewelry
Mhm.
and costume jewelry on off Fifth Avenue. And I got the job and I started as an inventory clerk, really. And I used to help Sally and Joy in the office with the bookkeeping.
Mhm.
And then I took over the billing, typewriting billing that we had to do. It was just invoicing bills because they had a lot of customers that they ship merchandise to.
Mhm.
And that was where I worked until I got pregnant with David.
Mhm.
And
Now,
then
how long were you married before you got pregnant with Dave?
not long. I got married in December 60. I went home to Jamaica to finally come back to process my papers there. I had to do that. We did everything here, but just to go down to get it, I had to come
Did you
back.
both go down, or did just one go down?
I went down alone at first, and then he came down after. And this was in 61.
Mhm.
I went down. And he came in the September. I think I must have gone down in the July, yeah, because the day I arrived was the day they were celebrating Jamaica's independence. I didn't know any of his family at the time. They all, well, his sister Vi came in from Jamaica, from Mandeville, and her husband met me at the airport. Cheetah came in and met me at the airport. And then Bally was down there at the time because he was coming back he had gone down to get his papers processed and he was coming back. So he met me. And even my old boyfriend met me at the airport.
What was his name?
Ron.
Uh-huh.
That's the one I just heard died.
Mhm.
But the funny thing is, I have a feeling that he thought that my marriage was a business marriage.
Oh,
You see?
yeah.
So because that
And he
was
kind of
what-
wanted to check out what you
Yes.
said about it and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So because where I stayed was with the Mosses in Mona, and when I went up, and I was showing Evelyn, they were all anxious to see Lloyd's picture, and I showed them the picture. And he looked at it and he said, "Oh, he's very good looking." So I think right away he realized, that there was something. So they left eventually.
So was Pop good looking? I guess every picture I've seen of him, he looked a little stern or something.
Yeah.
But and was he considered a pretty good looking guy?
Yes, he was quite handsome. He was quite handsome. He was a little on the heavy side, but he was quite a good-looking guy. So yeah, and that I went home and came back. In fact, I was working at Bowman Foster before because of the marriage and the processing. I was working at Bowman Foster, and then I left, took vacation, went home, and didn't know if when I come back they would still want me to work. And I came back and they wanted me back, so I worked there, and then I got pregnant with David. When I came back from Jamaica, I found that I was pregnant with David. That was like June. No, I went down in July. And I came back in September and found that I was pregnant. with
Wait,
David.
so you had to stay down there for 3 months to process paperwork and stuff?
Yeah, and it may have even been longer, but by Lloyd coming down, and he went in with me and said, "Look, I want my wife back to go back with me," and he kind of pushed a little there.
So it was to process paperwork for you to get like a permanent visa up here and
permanent
stuff?
visa to be here permanently. And I came back. But the funny thing is, he was not. Who was excited about my pregnancy when I came back? Ortiz, when I...
Godpa?
Yeah, when I said to him, Lloyd said to him, she's pregnant. He said, "What?" And he came and hugged me. I said, "More